Well, we have a great lineup today. So good morning, everybody. Great to see you all. I wish we could be together in person someday, but looking forward to this conversation today. I'm going to go over a couple housekeeping things. First, a big thank you to Delegate Corman and Delegate Polakovich-Carr for their help in getting us online and recording this and setting up the Zoom. And also, thank you so much to Delegate Solomon, who arranged for today's speakers and lineup. So thanks so much for all. The Transit Caucus is a team effort. So thanks everyone. Today, a couple other announcements. So just a reminder that Delegate Polakovich-Carr and Delegate Lewis are working on bylaws, and we are going to hopefully approve some bylaws, if not by the end of session, then immediately thereafter. So they'll be updating us at a future Monday briefing about those bylaws. But if you're interested or you have ideas, feel free to reach out to them. And today we're going to release our priority list. I got a Facebook flashback message on Thursday or Friday about our great press conference last year, kicking everything off with our first list ever of priority bills. And so we are going to list our priority bills, release them today. We will send you at the conclusion of this meeting social media graphics that you can share that list both our priority bills and all of our endorsements. A huge thank you to Delegate Solomon for, again, very ably pulling together having everybody submit their bills and then giving us a way to vote. And then a big thank you to Danny in my office for putting together some social media graphics for all of us to share. So you'll have in your inbox at the end of this meeting all of that material to see. And so thank you everybody for putting such great legislation in. Honestly, if we passed all these bills, it would transform Maryland for the better. So thank you for your work. So today we're going over our transit workforce. And I think now more than ever, after we've seen what's happened this year, it's really imperative that we understand what the workforce for our transit unions and for smart transportation and others, our locomotives, what they're going through. We had several deaths this year from MTA workers, one, a very violent death, and some, a lot of COVID cases. And, we know that MTA and WMATA are spending millions and millions of dollars, to tens of millions of dollars, frankly, to make the transit system as safe as it possibly can be. And that's for riders, but it's also just as much for those people who work at transit. We sometimes think of frontline workers as those who are taking the bus to get to work, perhaps, our healthcare workers, but our transit workers, they are frontline workers too, as we all know. So I'm really just so grateful for their work each and every day to make Maryland more connected, to get people to their jobs, and also very grateful for the advocacy that they do to make the transit system better than it is. They are an important voice for improving transit and the transit experience for everybody in Maryland. So a huge thank you to them. So without further ado, we're going to hear from Larry Casey-Camp, Stephen Courtien, Herb Harris, Michael McMillan, and Ray Jackson. And I think we're going to start with Larry because he has another engagement after this. Is he on? Larry, are you on? There you are. I see you. And I hear you have a screen, something to share. Is that right?
Yes, I'll
okay.
put some slides there.
Great. So Delegate Corman can help make sure that you can share your screen. So thank you and welcome.
All right. Thank you. Larry Casey-Camp, I'm the Legislative Director for the Transportation Division of the International Association of Sheet Metal, Air, Rail, and Transportation Workers, otherwise known as SMART. We're the largest rail labor union in North America. Our members in Maryland are employees of CSX Transportation, Norfolk Southern Railway, Amtrak, Bombardier, which operates our MARC service, and the Canton Railroad in Baltimore City. They work as conductors, engineers, switchmen, trainmen, utility persons, and yard masters, and operate the freight and passenger trains that travel throughout the state. Overall, SMART represents over 216,000 members throughout the country. So I'd like to walk you through a few of our legislative efforts we're involved in, either through support as part of a coalition or independently. And I'm going to try to screen share this. Okay, it says disabled. It's marked there.
1 second.
Okay.
Try it now.
Okay, here we go. Okay, first off is House Bill 1236. That's the expansion of MARC service. This bill was passed in 2020 session of the General Assembly and vetoed by the governor. And it would require the MTA to pursue an agreement on a pilot program to establish MARC train service between Union Station and the District of Columbia. And also the administration to pursue an agreement on a pilot program to establish train service between Perryville and Newark, Delaware. We've been advocating and supporting for the expansion of MARC train service for many years. And we believe there's no better time than now to move on this. The Biden administration is very interested in investing in transit, and Maryland needs to be in a position to take advantage when the purse strings open. So overriding the governor's veto of this bill from last year would be a very good start. Senate Bill 486, House Bill 581. It's the Maryland Essential Workers Protection Act. This proposed legislation places requirements on essential employers to provide certain benefits and safety and health protections to essential workers during emergency declarations by the governor. Our members who work in MARC and Amtrak operations are considered essential workers under this legislation. During the pandemic, our members have continued to go to work each day to provide transportation needs to the public. And in doing so, many have contracted the COVID virus, which resulted in them becoming very ill, jeopardizing their family's health and losing pay. And others have had to quarantine for being exposed to other workers who had the virus. And this legislation addresses many of the hardships these essential workers experienced. Senate Bill 91, which is criminal law assault of public transportation operators, penalties. This legislation would increase the penalties for voluntarily causing physical injury to bus, train, or light rail operators, or any other individuals that provide public transportation services. Again, our members in transit have experienced a rise in assaults over the past several years, and especially during the pandemic. MARC and Amtrak require the traveling public to wear masks when traveling on their systems. And as you can imagine, there's a percentage of the public who believe they don't have to comply and become argumentative and belligerent when confronted by the conductors. So this legislation would be a much needed, significant deterrent that would make passengers think twice before acting. Senate Bill 199, House Bill 114, Transit Safety and Investment Act. This legislation would require the governor to include certain appropriations in the state budget from the Transportation Trust Fund to the Maryland Transit Administration for operating and capital needs. And the MTA has over $1 billion state of good repair backlog and has experienced cuts to their cabinet program in each of the last 3 capital budgets. And as a result, they have unsafe, unreliable conditions that will rapidly worsen without immediate action. Currently, according to the Federal Transit Administration, the MTA already has the most frequent breakdowns in bus and rail service among peer agencies in the US. So passage of this legislation will allow for much needed investments in Maryland's transit network. House Bill 492, Railroad Company Movement of Freight Required Crew. This legislation, often referred to as 2-person crew law, was also previously passed the General Assembly. In 2019, it passed with a supermajority bipartisan vote, only to be vetoed by the governor, and unfortunately never made it to an override vote last year. This legislation is proactive rail safety legislation that would simply require that each freight train operating in the state and sharing tracks with passenger and commuter trains would have a minimum crew of at least 2 persons. Now, it's pretty simple. Several devastating rail accidents happened that gave rise to the pursuit of this legislation.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much.
Notable was the Black Atlantic Quebec rail accident. This accident resulted in 47 deaths and a town that was practically destroyed. And then the Wayvega, Wisconsin rail accident, which resulted in a chemical fire that burned for 2 weeks and caused an evacuation of an entire town. Both of these were single crew member operations. Since 2016, when this effort started, minimum 2-person crew legislation has been introduced in 34 states so far, and it's passed 10 states. Prince George's County Council, the Montgomery County Council, and Baltimore City Council all passed resolutions and support the 2-person minimum crew standard. In closing, I'll get back to what I stated earlier. Maryland needs to be in a position to take advantage of the Biden administration's goals regarding rebuilding the country's infrastructure and investing in transit. Passing of this legislation I referred to would go a long way toward putting Maryland in position. And so I'll leave you with first the words of our new Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg, when testifying at his confirmation hearing in Congress. He said, quote, "I think, as you know, I'm the second biggest train enthusiast in this administration. I think Americans ought to enjoy the highest levels of passenger rail service." And finally, with the words of President Biden regarding all the issues I just referred to.
Hey folks, thanks so much for a chance to speak to you all today. You know, I'm a public transit guy. I'm going to triple funding for public transit and invest in a second great railroad revolution. You know, for 36 years, I took the train to work every single day, over 250 miles a day, round trip. The crews were like my second family. We knew each other's names. We watched each other's kids grow up. That's why I've been one of the greatest honors of my generation. That people still call me Amtrak Joe. And I'm going to keep fighting for those crews, requiring 2-person crews on freight trains, protecting transit workers from assault, making sure that everyone has what they need to safely do their job, period.
Yay.
So finally, Maryland has a window of opportunity, you know, and we believe the time to act is now. So thank you for your time. Thank you, Brooke. Thanks, Jared. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you for reminding us, this is our first full week with a transit loving president. So woohoo! I'm very excited to see his infrastructure bill when it comes out. Very excited about Secretary nominee Buttigieg, and it's a new day for transit in America, I think. So thank you for that, Larry. So why don't we turn it over now to our ATU locals. We have, I think, Mike McMillan I saw on the call, and I think Greg Bowen is with us as well from Local 689. So Mike and Greg, if you'd like to say a few words, introduce yourselves, tell us what you're hearing from your members, concerns, thoughts that you have about legislation this year as well. So Mike, do you want to start us off, and then Greg? Thank you.
Yes, Mike McMillan, ATU Local President Business Agent for ATU Local 1300. Delegate Lehrman, once again, thank you. You supported and stood by ATU here in Baltimore. Since my term, I started in 2019 as president. Prior to that, I was vice president. But, the outreach that you gave coming out of the House, with the Transit Safety Investment Act last year to jumpstart everything moving into this year is, just wonderful. And then for Senator McCray to pick it up this year and, carry the ball to the finish line, and which something that we here at ATU Local 1300 support, and we feel as though that it will get done, and we thank you. And also to Senator Solomon, thank you for reaching out and for the efforts that you're putting into this as well, and the support. I want to echo a little bit of the words of what Larry has already stated with two of the strongest bills for transportation. One, which of course is the Transit Safety and Investment Act, and also Senate Bill 91 dealing with the assault on public transportation. And these bills will go hand in hand. The assaults on operators, everything stems because of a lack of funding for transportation, in which has been underfunded, for decades. And that lack of funding, it streams over into the small police force that we have, also to the service cuts, as you've realized that the MTA tried to put forth the past several months and trying to give some blame towards the pandemic. When they learn that they can work with less service during this pandemic and, still get to get out to the public just the bare minimal, just to suffice them, they will try to do it. And they have tried to make these cuts and blame it on the funding. As you know, we are under the Fare Box Recovery Act right now. And if this, with all the revenues that contributes to that fare box recovery being so low, they would try to use that as an excuse not to, or as the government would try to use that as an excuse to say, hey, we don't have enough to fund them to the public transit system because of what has been going on with COVID. So when this bill for the transit safety investment go through, we'll have this dedicated funding and no excuses as to why breakdowns happen because we don't have the parts, or why the service has been cut because they feel as though that, this service isn't, we couldn't afford to provide the connectivity and the extra service to be out there. It will reduce the assaults on bus operators just because the transit agency has changed from month to month with different routes, and people can't get to where they need to go. And as we know, no one gets used to change overnight. But once again, the frontline employees and Delegate Lehrman, I thank you for always being one to recognize our operators as frontline employees or essential workers and frontline workers, in which, once again, as I've echoed before, we've yet to hear the governor make that call directly to transportation to even say thank you and recognize the MTA public transit operators and the other employees as frontline employees. So thank you for always recognizing them in that manner. But these are two bills that we, as I stated, goes hand in hand, and we fully support it. We encourage everyone to support because we think that Senator McCray can carry that ball across the line and, get finally the funding for transportation so that there'll never be excuses, so that things with the death of Marcus Parks won't be in vain. Marcus Parks was the bus operator. He was a friend of mine as well. I have over 27 years with the company. He had a little bit over 20, I think like 21. And we worked together as bus operators out of the Eastern Division. And for him to die tragically the way he did as a bus operator, it weighs heavy on all of us. And that shouldn't be. And it's all because of the senseless act of one person who, when they approached the bus to ask him a question, and because he could not provide the service that they wanted, and this altercation took place. So that's why I say, look, funding more, to have more police doing more routine checks and more bus checks. It's one thing that Kevin Quinn has stepped up and has vowed to do, but he still has echoed the words that they still don't have the funding to get more police officers on the police force. And as you may know too, there was even an assault on an MTA police officer at the Penn North subway station where he was knocked out by a person getting off the subway train. And he stayed in the hospital for almost a month behind it. So, it's all the way around. It's just every excuse is just being used, underfunded. And safety. There should never be an issue with funding when it comes to safety for here in one of the, I hate to say it, you know, I love the city and the state that I live in, but for the crime and the notoriety that it has gained national attention, you know, it seems like that the government would recognize that this funding is needed, you know, for transportation, especially in the city and state that we're living in. So once again, I thank you and ask that all who are able to stand behind these bills and continue to support it for safety. And for the situation with Marcus Parks as ATU Local 1300 and ATU and our international, we always say, not one more, not one more, not one more. So thank you.
Thank you. I think Delegate Learman is easing into another meeting, so I will turn it over to Greg Bowen from ATU 689. Greg, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Greg Bowen. I'm from ATU Local 689. We deal with WMATA and the other transportation entities around our jurisdiction. And I would like to echo number one, with the condolences that Brother Mike McMillan has put out there, and the presentation pretty much that he gave. We stand behind, you know, those bills as well, with multiple operator assaults. Just the during this hard time, and even before then, but now even more so during these hard times. A lot of people are frustrated because of this situation. A lot of people are still out of work, so on and so forth. And the authority pretty much similar to Mike said earlier that, you know, they're taking, I'm not gonna say they're taking advantage of the situation. They're realizing, oh, we can run less service and so on and so forth, which also causes overcrowding, so on and so forth. When we're at a time period right now where we definitely need more social distancing. So we need more transportation out there, because there's more people who do need to get, that are essential employees who do need to get to work, or who are frontline workers who do need to get to work. And, you know, one of the creeds that we have here is we are the frontline employees that transport the frontline employees. So if, you know, if we can't make sure that we get everybody to where they need to get to safely, it causes a domino effect that, you know, essentially goes into several different industries. So we definitely support both bills. We definitely looking to hopefully get something done about the guaranteed funding, because, you know, that's always, it's been underfunded. Something like I said, I echo deeply what Mike said. Been underfunded for so long that it is very hard to accomplish everything that you need to do when you don't have all the tools in place to do it. So I'm not going to take a whole bunch of time. That's just pretty much my saying. I thank you pretty much for almost everything that you said, and I thank you know, all the delegates and senators who's shown support and trying to get what we are trying to accomplish done. You know, and thank you.
Thank you, Greg, so much. We'll now turn to Stephen Cordian, President of the Baltimore DC Metro Building Council. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Good morning. I just want to introduce myself first. The Baltimore DC Metro Building Trades is the umbrella organization for all the construction unions. Combined, we spend over $22 million a year on training. That is from dues, so it's not grants, tax money, or anything else. We operate 24 training centers in Maryland, and we have over 24,000 members. Our construction is and maintains to be a ability for to help maintain family sustaining wages and also a middle class. These transportation projects tend to be very large, long-term employment opportunities for construction. We're always temporary, but these transportation projects tend to last more than a year, 2, 3 years. So it allows an entry point for someone to come onto a project knowing nothing, and allows them to learn over a time period, working with the same crews and on the same project for a regular period, to start and enter into the apprenticeship at day one with no knowledge, to graduate after 3 to 4 years as a journey person. Besides just the help to the worker on this, the transportation in the area, as we all know, we're not doing great. And so we always look for additional funding. Most of the money that most of our focus has been on the federal to pass the transportation spending. As far as with Maryland, are the big concerns we have right now are where we're supporting SB 199 and HB 114, which is the Corey McRae bill for Transit Safety Investment Act. This past year with the COVID-19 and basically no one's driving, the gas tax, all that, we had a lot of projects that we normally do that were deferred under deferred maintenance. So we have had we've had some layoffs and stuff that we normally would do has not, the projects won't start. So this, we understand, is just part of the tax base and you don't have money to pay for it. We understand our long-term goals. Again, mainly federally, but there's 2 projects in Maryland that are we're keeping a very close eye on. One is Amtrak. It's the widening of the BMP tunnel. This is going to help alleviate the bottleneck that we have up in Baltimore coming down south. This will also help establish run-through service at Union Station to connect with the VRE and MARC, and adding additional track on the Penn line to DC Union Station. Besides the work aspect of it, this will help, like with what Larry Casekamp spoke about, where some people don't want to take the train because of these bottlenecks that happen mainly in Baltimore right now, connecting to DC. And it's because of the combination of the rail. So expanding this out will help alleviate that, but it'll also make it much more, it'll alleviate some of the highway work and roads because people will be able to get back and forth between Baltimore and DC more quickly and reliably. CSX, the Howard Street Tunnel expansion will slow double stacking requirements on the bridge, on all these bridges. This project also includes 9 bridges in the state of Maryland. Combine these projects, working with us, we'll be able to employ many Maryland residents, because when we get a project, we do have a local hire, whether it's required or not. We also have mandatory apprenticeship requirements, whether it's required by the state or not. We do invest our money into training. This is, again, not state money, so we believe in it. That's basically it. And if you guys have any questions for me, let me know.
Terrific. The great thing about those 2 passenger rail products, the Penn Line and the BMP Tunnel, is the president has been both over the Penn Line and through the BMP Tunnel over 36 years, as we saw in that video. So well attuned to the challenges there. Our last speaker has not been able to join us yet, so we will call on him if he's able to arrive. But in the meantime, I think there are some questions. If you want to use the raise hand function, we'll start with Senator Vital.
Thank you, Delegate Corman. So I've been a big supporter of transit and particularly train, improving our train system. My question is, though, if we get all this additional money for transit, how will these panels feel if the money's invested in maglev versus upgrading our Amtrak and MARC train? Anybody?
Anyone have an opinion on the proposed maglev project that Senator Vital's referencing? Guess not.
It's not. Well, thank you, Mark. You know, I think it's important that we look at where we will invest the additional money, and I do hope it's in high-speed rail. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Vital. Delegate Healy, did you have a question?
Not for this group of people, but at the end of the conversation, I mentioned to you that there was a story in the Washington Post over the weekend that I think the Transit Caucus might want to address in some way. I'll wait till we're finished with this conversation, though.
Great. Any other questions? I don't see any other hands raised. Obviously, I think most of us on this call, if not everybody, agree with the agenda that the folks set out. But if there's any questions, now's the moment. Otherwise, we can go back to Delegate Healy for her discussion point. Any other questions for our worker speakers? Okay, well, thank you all again so much, you know, not only for being here, but everything you're doing both advocacy-wise and then working through this pandemic in particular. I mean, obviously, these jobs are always tough jobs, but it's even more difficult right now with the public health challenges and the economic challenges. We really appreciate everything you're doing, and also your work to keep us on the right path on all these advocacy issues, which we will keep working on. You're welcome to hang around while we talk about Delegate Healy's issue or any other announcements, but other than that, really appreciate you all being here once again. And let me turn it back to Delegate Healy for her topic of conversation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I saw the story over the weekend in the Washington Post about how the headline was striking because it says the state could be on the hook for millions of dollars if these projects to widen the Beltway and widen 270 fail for any reason. So that alarmed me quite a bit. And this contract, the first contract for this P3 project is going to be before the Board of Public Works pretty soon. So I was hoping that we in the Transit Caucus could send a letter to the Board of Public Works asking them to scrutinize that contract and make sure that it doesn't leave the state holding the bag. I mean, we already saw what happened with the Purple Line and how it cost the state a lot of money, and they were not written into the contract as being on the hook at that time. It was a negotiated thing. But if it's just leaves the state holding the bag, I think it's a very bad idea. And that's aside and apart from the merits of the project. This is about the prudent use of state resources. I think the comptroller, the treasurer, and the governor, although the governor is it's his project, so he wants it to go forward. So I think we should really, out of courtesy, address the entire Board of Public Works and ask them not to put such strain on this potential strain on the state budget in the future.
So first of all, obviously happy to hear from other people on the topic, which I know more than I want to know about, but certainly Senator Beidel, Senator Augustine, Delegate Barron, Delegate Fraser-Fidalgo, Brooke and myself can sort of talk about this offline. We've been sort of running various letters through that, what I'll just call sort of an exec committee process to start. So I can talk, I think Delegate Learman had to drop off. We can talk about, what the best way to proceed is, but also of course, happy to hear from other folks on there.
I sent a copy of the link to Delegate Learman because she was the one who sent out all the notices to the caucus. And I didn't quite understand how to do this. So if you could also send the link to the rest of the members of the caucus, because it was in the Washington Post. Not everybody reads the Post all the time, and not everybody reads the Baltimore Sun all the time. And sometimes it can get missed. And this is a statewide issue. It's a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, just for context for folks, what's going on is in April or May, the Department of Transportation plans to submit to the Board of Public Works a project developer agreement that would basically hand over control of the Beltway and 270 expansion to this private entity. And then subsequent construction contracts would go before the board, but they would all be under the auspices of this P3 concessionaire. So now is sort of the action moment for this project. And as Delegate Healy was saying, there's some things in the article about the millions of dollars the state could be on the hook for if the project doesn't go forward the way the governor envisions with 2 toll lanes in each direction, or if there's litigation, or if there's environmental problems, or if a future governor is less interested in this. So it's definitely an issue. I don't know if others have thoughts besides Delegate Healy that they want to share, as long as we have some time here. Okay, you guys are a lot less talkative than last week.
Actually, Mark, this is Robin. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I would just say, thank you for being on top of the issue and communicating with the powers that be. I was just wondering, is there a potential role for the Transit Caucus to make any kind of statement or any exhortation? If not, that's fine. Just curious. Thanks.
I mean, as I said, I think Delegate Healy's letter idea to the Board of Public Works is a good one. I mean, there's been so many letters to the Board of Public Works on this project over the past couple of years. I can't remember if any of them were actually under the Transit Caucus's auspices. Delegate Solomon might remember. I'm not sure. But, it tends to be the same group of signatories that sign on to a lot of these things. So, and look, there's a few different things going on here. I mean, obviously some of us have sort of ideological problems with the project. This is more of what's the sort of fiscal roadmap here for the state. And it's a slightly different issue than saying you don't like the project for environmental reasons or because you want to invest in transit. We want to make sure that the state's bottom line is being protected. So, I mean, as I said, Robin, I think, you know, Brooke and Senator Beidel and Senator Augustine and Delegates Barron, Fraser-Hidalgo and I can sort of start by talking about what might make sense for the Transit Caucus to do as a caucus. Since, as Brooke said up front, we don't have bylaws yet. All this is a little bit, you know, sort of playing it by ear, but we can certainly talk about what the best way to proceed with that is.
Thanks.
Other thoughts? Great. Well, you know, we have another Transit Caucus briefing next week and then another the week after that. And that's all we've scheduled for now, only because we figured the scheduling is going to get harder the deeper we get into session as committees are meeting more and more. But we might, I know particularly on MagLev, there's a lot of interest in that topic. So there's been discussion about adding a meeting about that. So not closed to other meetings, but we only have 2 more on the calendar so far. So keep an eye on your inboxes. And Delegate Bagnell, did you have something you wanted to add?
I did, just sort of following up on Delegate Lewis's point and your point about, you know, determining how we're going to use sort of the power of the Transit Caucus and what our role is going to be, because obviously we're a little hamstrung with COVID, and I just wonder if there is a thought to how we get sort of out in front of the press as opposed to, you know, writing a letter that goes to the board, but then maybe doesn't get any sunshine. Because right now, Hogan really holds all the cards when it comes to messaging. And so, you know, public facing, the only messaging we're hearing on this is either Hogan or investigative journalists who are getting in there and identifying these, you know, these horrible agreements that we've been involved with. And I'm just wondering, you know, if that's something that has to be in the bylaws before we actually take more of a front-facing position.
Sure, I'll just be honest. I'm just trying to be a little sensitive to the fact that we have a really great bipartisan caucus right now, and I just want to make sure that we are respectful of all of the members of the caucus and just figure out a way to thread that needle. So that's my only hesitance, Delegate Bagnall. We've had great bipartisan support for a lot of our efforts. Not everything can be bipartisan, but I just want to make sure that we are respecting the full spectrum of our caucus.
And I appreciate that. And I wouldn't want to be disrespectful. But when we're talking about these specific issues, there is only one voice that's actually speaking on the issue. And I'm just wondering if there is an ability to have the caucus be a little more front facing.
Yeah, I mean, certainly I read Delegate Solomon's name in articles all the time, raising questions about the project, not in his role as a member of the Transit Caucus, but you know, there are definitely other voices out there, but obviously the governor's megaphone is quite large. And so we will just work on navigating that. But I think my views on this project are pretty clear. So I'm just trying to make sure we're respecting other views that may be out there besides my own.
Thank you so much.
All right. Was there anybody else? I'm sorry. Some people are just raising their hands on the screen, so it's hard to tell. We good?
Yep.
Okay, well, we will post the meeting on YouTube again and send that around. And other than that, see everybody in this forum a week from today and then in many other Zoom boxes before then. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.